Tonight's lead, holiday spirit GOP style. Later tonight, GOP leaders are expected at the White House for a Christmas party. It should be a festive event. Maybe they'll share some eggnog with the president. Maybe sing some Christmas carols. Maybe good cheer will be in the air. Or maybe not. It might be a bit tough after the Republicans' new debt offer that's definitely not in the holiday spirit. For weeks, they've called the White House plan a non-starter. The GOP Republican in the Senate reportedly laughed out loud. The leader of the GOP in the Senate laughed out loud when he heard about the president's plan. And today, Speaker Boehner said the White House plan was a, quote, a la-la land offer. Well, earlier today, the GOP finally revealed its own proposal. It says it offers $2.2 trillion in debt reduction. It calls for increasing the eligibility age for Medicare and also puts Social Security on the table. Gutting entitlements? Check. But what about getting rid of the Bush tax cuts for the upper income? You know the key point from the campaign? In a letter to the president, GOP leaders said they will continue to oppose and will not agree to them. In fact, they propose not to raise tax rates for the wealthy, but to lower them. That's from Speaker Boehner, who said this about the president's plan.
I was just flabbergasted. I looked at him and said, you can't be serious. I've just never seen anything like it.
Never seen anything like it? The president won the election on that premise. But Speaker Boehner seems to have forgotten that.
They must have forgotten that Republicans continue to hold the majority in the House. You know, the president's idea of a negotiation is roll over and do what I ask. We need to find common ground, and we need to find it quickly.
Speaker Boehner claims he's looking for common ground, but right now he's not even in the right ballpark. His problem is that the political ground has shifted for him and his Tea Partiers. Joining me now is Michelle Cotto, Washington correspondent for Newsweek and the Daily Beast, and Ezra Klein, who is a Washington Post columnist and an MSNBC policy analyst. Thank you both for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rav.
Michelle, let me start with you. The president ran on raising taxes on the rich, and he won on that premise. Why didn't the GOP get the message?
Oh, they got the message, but this is high posturing season. They have to get in there and be as intransigent or make as much noise about how they're not going to compromise as they possibly can. But, you know, the president has pretty much said he wants tax rates for the wealthy on the table. So they're just going to push this as far as they can. I mean, my guess is that we're going into next year with this. They're going to kick this can down the road again. Now, Ezra, you wrote today that Speaker Boehner's trying to call a mulligan. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I'm drawing on my very shallow knowledge of golf. He wants a do-over here. So what Speaker Boehner's proposal is today, and I give him some credit here, this is the most moderate proposal he has ever made in public by a long shot. He's taken the proposal that Erskine Bowles, the co-chair of the Deficit Commission and President Clinton's former chief of staff, presented to the super committee, if you remember them, as a compromise.
Right.
Now, that compromise is not going to work today because that was a compromise from 2011 when Republicans were in the driver's seat. And many people said, you need to take this proposal. This was what David Brooks said in the New York Times and many other Republicans. And they said, if you don't take it and you don't win the next election, you're going to end up with something much worse. So they are going to end up with something much worse. But I think it, frankly, is a bit of progress that Boehner is beginning. Essentially, his opening bid is something that was considered a compromise bid back in 2011.
Now, Michelle, the politics of this seems to be potentially disastrous for the Republicans. When you look at the fact that 82% of people polled oppose reducing Social Security benefits, 67% oppose raising Medicare eligibility age. Meanwhile, 60% support raising taxes on the wealthy.
It's very important that people think about the fact that, in theory, Americans like small government. But in practice, when you start talking about popular programs, they get very, very snippy about your threatening to cut anything. So what we have here is a situation where the Republicans have taken away the presidential talking point of, well, Republicans don't have a plan, but they have not taken away the talking point of, well, Republicans want to cut all this so that they can keep tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. And until they address that issue, I think, from a PR standpoint, this could remain politically disastrous for them.
Now, Ezra, they keep talking, they being the Republicans, like this was a status quo election. But you wrote today that they are in a weaker position this time around and know it. You wrote, Boehner opens his latest letter by reminding the president that 2012 was a status quo election in which both you and the Republican majority in the House were reelected. That's technically true and in every other way incorrect. The fact is that 2012 was a Democratic rout in which Democrats got more votes than Republicans at the presidential, Senate, and House levels. That means Republicans are in as a far weaker position than they were in 2011, and Boehner knows it. His newest offer is proof. What do you mean his newer offer is proof?
In 2011, President Obama, President Obama and the Democrats who felt that they were kind of back on their heels, they were chasing after Boehner with compromise proposals, one of which looked a lot like the one we're talking about today. Deep in the Obama-Boehner negotiations, they were talking about a proposal with $800 billion in revenue that would come through some somewhat difficult to define tax reform process. Right now, we're seeing the exact opposite. President Obama is sticking firm with what he offered in his budget, or at least sticking firm in his opening bid, and Boehner is kind of chasing after Obama with more or less compromise proposals and saying, why won't you work with me? Why won't you come out? Why won't you give more? Why won't you sacrifice more? Look, we're early here, and most of this kind of sager people I talked in Washington say we're not going to get deep into this until mid-December, a couple weeks from now at least. But if we begin just doing a process of kind of incrementally getting from in between the two proposals, you could very easily imagine between Obama and Boehner on taxes is $1.2 trillion. That's about where a lot of people think we're going to end up. Between them on mandatory spending is about $700 billion or $750. That wouldn't be a shocker either. Boehner's opening bid here is not the bid of the side in a stronger position. It's the bid of the side desperately trying to get some credit in the press for being willing to compromise.
Now, Michelle, what we don't see in the counteroffer is an extension of payroll tax cut, extension of unemployment aid, raising the debt ceiling. None of this is in their counter offer. And Bill Kristol pointed out that ignoring the payroll tax cut, the GOP is going to look like it doesn't care about the middle class. Listen to Bill Kristol on this.
The extension of the payroll tax cut. The Republicans are at real risk, in my view now, of looking like they are defending keeping the current tax rates for the wealthy, the Bush tax rates for the wealthy. And right now, the official Republican position is let the payroll tax rate go back up by 2 points. The Republicans look like, I'm worried, are in the position of looking as if they don't care about the middle class and just want to keep tax rates low for wealthy Americans.
I mean, I'm not one that usually agrees with Kristol, but clearly that gives them, Michelle, the image that they are not fighting or that caring about the middle class. Why would they leave this out?
Well, because they have to work these numbers somehow, and you have to look at what they're talking about. They don't want to touch tax rates at all, and so they're left kind of jiggling around the edges with a lot of tax reform and closing loopholes and things like that. They can't afford to extend these rates. And Kristol is not the only Republican who is worried about this sort of thing. There is a persistent PR problem with the party. You know, it just lost the last election because it couldn't kind of come to terms with its insistence on championing tax cuts for the wealthy, and it is about to kind of go down that same PR rabbit hole again with this proposal.
But Ezra, wouldn't they know that this is a PR hole they're about to go down again? I mean, why would they even risk this, in your opinion?
To some degree, I think they're so far down the PR hole that they may not see which way is up at the moment after the last election. But think about it more broadly from a bargaining standpoint, right? In particular, things like the payroll tax cut and any kind of stimulus that the Republicans feel they can eventually stomach, that is a great thing for them to trade away at the end. It is something that maybe they don't hate that much, but they know President Obama really wants. And so when you're late in the negotiations, that's when they're going to begin to give things like that up as kind of Band-Aids to make the whole deal at the end of the day stick together. The other truth that is always worth remembering about Boehner is that he tends to be, maybe not at this very second, we're not sure, but tends to be as afraid or more afraid of his right flank than of the center. So when you talk about a PR nightmare, there's a PR nightmare, and then there's losing your speakership at the beginning of the next Congress because Republicans feel like that you gave away the farm during these negotiations. So Boehner is always looking over his shoulder with an eye to the conservative base remaining happy with him.
Well, all I could say is I hope they're having fun at the Christmas party tonight. Michelle Cottle and Ezra Klein, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.